and this is Thomas. All right, so Thomas has a few announcements to make that I think everyone might be interested to hear. Not yet. Okay. So just a question, any one of you plan to go to JS Camp Asia from last year? Oh, hello. Yeah, I think we had 3 people here in this room who attended. Are there those who plan to attend but was unable to? Yeah, me. Yeah, that was very embarrassing. I couldn't show my face there. Yeah, so really, just 2 of you. It's pretty cool. There was actually a lot of Filipinos who attended. I heard.
Yes. So I can actually say Filipinos were the 2nd most attending nation to the conference last year. And because of that, I mean, clearly the first was Singaporeans because they were just there. After breakfast, come over and check out the conference. But because of that, I was very impressed actually. I didn't expect that at all. It was by far number 2. And so as a result, we thought, why do we not make that a traveling event and see if we can actually organize a conference here in Manila with similar we're currently actively looking into, like we met already with a lot of different venues here in Manila and check them out and eat food and test drink coffees and see if they have some exciting place for you to visit. And I don't want to give away too much just yet, but I think end of November, like last year, you should keep your calendar free and we'll hopefully have something for you. Another announcement that I can make is also that it's definitely not going to be called JS Camp, but it will be called jsconf.asia. I finally got the trademark for the conference. So with JSConf in the US, JSConf in Berlin in Europe, with JSConf in Argentina and in Sydney, like we finally conquer Asia too, and there will be a proper JSConf event here in Manila in November. That's like a big announcement. For everything else, you can follow the Twitter account, which currently still is JSCamp_Asia. We have JSConf_Asia already too, before you start like preserving it. It's too late. And like, I'm not sure yet how or if we want to transition all the followers over, or if we just tweet everything twice, or if we even want to change the name. That's going to happen somehow, but you can follow definitely there. And JSConf Asia is also hooked up already to JS Camp, the old website, and like follow that for announcements too. So I'm sure you see something there. And I hope I see all of you there and all your friends too. We have plenty of space. We look around about 300 people, and a lot from them abroad, meaning outside of the Philippines, from Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, Australia, all where we had amazing attendees coming from for the event in Singapore. And classic, like also to put Manila on the stage internationally and see that here's actually a huge developer community going. Therefore, I came actually not Rico enough to start Manila.js, which was an awesome, smooth move, I think, and like it's so good to see that so many people actually showed up for his effort. So thanks, Rico, for doing that. It also made me more comfortable in like being sure that this is a good idea to actually host the event here. So yeah, look for November, and then. I promised a few friends because, you know, I come from Singapore right now, and there's this constant, like I hear even the government in Singapore is sometimes paying people to come to the Philippines and like, you know, show off Singapore and like how awesome jobs and startups that for developers they are and how much talent they need, and like I'm like, oh, awkward, you know, the same position. But I promised a few friends that I definitely talk about them, and maybe you have friends or yourself at some point you find yourself looking for something nice. And to say this in advance, like it's also that some of these startups are actually looking actively into moving their development to the Philippines because of people like you here that don't exist so much in Singapore, which I think is also interesting. And one of the companies is maybe a bit of a Mix 33. It's a social chatting startup. Actually, not so much a startup anymore. Then around 3 years. Have a crazy, awesome CEO. Have just raised funding. Are huge. Have like more than 2.5 million active users each month, and are creating like a little chat app for the region. Are huge in Indonesia. I think the leading social network in Indonesia before Twitter, which is interesting. They have like stuff in Afghanistan and Israel, and like sometimes crazy stories. I know from one where they have a resell concept where people can sell their stuff in like countries like Afghanistan, and these people end up owing Mix33 like sometimes a lot of money. And so it turned out that one guy there owed Mix33 $10,000, and they had to get it somehow out of Afghanistan, war zone with the US and stuff. So one of the stories is that they suddenly had the CIA in their office standing and like asking about like weird money transfers and what's that supposed to be. So it's like there's always like it's a really messy startup, but it's super driven and super exciting to be in. Then another startup is from a few friends of mine from New Zealand. It's called TradeGecko.com, and they do an inventory and order management and are conquering currently the English-speaking markets. Raised a lot of money right now, and they are actually thinking of coming here with a development office to like be able to get people like you here. They're creating like a really well UI designed inventory order management to help like little stores and merchants that sell stuff physically all over the internet to get rid of spreadsheets in their inventory management and sales organization. I think that's a pretty good effort, and they're getting lots of interest right now. So check them out. They're definitely a cool team. I think there are now 6 people based in Singapore. Another startup is Smooth, and they were it's slightly different. It's more of a hardware startup. They're doing an electric car sharing, all electric car sharing. Meaning, I don't know if you've seen these these Mitsubishi cars, MIEVs. They're all electric. Have a range of like 100 kilometers. Perfect for Singapore. Really, it's a small city, and like you really need to. 2 times the country essentially that can go on one battery. And they are creating not only their own hardware, but also all the software applications and the web stuff surrounding it to do proper car sharing in Singapore, so that like everybody can just go and open with their MRT card a car and drive it and drop it somewhere. And it's all electric vehicles, like a sustainable effort to like get rid of the whole gasoline thing a little bit. And they're looking very hard right now, also raised funding for this, and working close with the government in Singapore on incentives for sustainable energy and making Singapore a more green city and stuff. What was the last one? Redmart, right. A company that I'm currently consulting for as well. It's an online grocery store. They definitely have plans to come to Manila in the next 3 years, if I'm not saying anything that I shouldn't say. So they are very local in Singapore right now.
3 years to build that company here in the Philippines. Before they come.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly the style I'm looking for. I think they're pretty awesome. They are creating 3 companies in one, not only an e-commerce grocery store, but a logistics company to optimize warehouse management and picking routes and delivery of groceries in Singapore. And specifically a nice problem here in Manila to solve with all the traffic. How can you get groceries to people in time? And they create a web tech company on the side, because they're very well aware that you need to own the technology to be able to actually create an amazing online grocery store. So currently I'm involved in that as well, and they're moving pretty fast, which is nice. I have an iPhone app coming and so on. It's built on Backbone, by the way, just Backbone and Backbone Layout Manager, thanks to Seb, who like did the whole stack and build scripts and continuous integration and all these things. And so hopefully there will be something new in May to see like an entirely redone web store to be able to come to the Philippines at some point as well with the web technology. So this is like just for a few friends and yeah, one of my clients right now to promote a little bit what's going on. And if you're interested, drop me a note. And other than that, I hope like you enjoy what Rico built with Manila.js. Hopefully a lot more to come, although I'm not sure where you want to go with the speakers. Really now, like the first one had like what, 45 people. The second one has like 70 or even more, and then you get Jeremy as a speaker. Like, where do you go from here?
Down. You go down.
That's it. magic curve. But like, yeah, keep supporting this. I think there should only be more awesome web developers to keep the web forward, and I think there need to be more Asia-born web technologies. I mean, it's pretty embarrassing to see that we're still building on all the technology that is brought to us from the east, or west, depending, from the west. I think it's west, yeah, from Europe and the US, right? It's like. And I think, or at least it feels to me like that we're a little bit on the verge where that can change, and actually awesome technology can come from Asia and adapt it in the world. And with the JS Camp, I try to do a little bit of that as well. And for example, one of the awesome findings with JS Camp was Sang Min Shin, like a Korean guy. He did his first talk in English at JS Camp, and like the video is online, you should check it out on YouTube. He was mind-blowingly amazing in English, and he had his entire talk like pre-written and printed on a big stack of paper, and it was like just having it there in case, and like had it all in his head. Like on the flight, he must have read this like 3 times or so. And he did an amazing talk on performance optimizations for HTML5 on mobile and the whole clutchiness of mobile engines out there. And I was like, if the conference wouldn't have been there, like nobody would have found out about this technology from Korea just because of the language barrier that was there, because like just for the Korean market, for a Korean gaming company. And this like was now featured on like Adobe's HTML5 blog. He was on Smashing Magazine and like lots of other stuff. So this is a pretty cool thing, and I hope we get some of these from Manila as well. I want to encourage people to work on open source stuff, work on awesome projects. And yeah, let me know if you have something to talk about. I'm looking for speakers for the conference, obviously. And I wouldn't mind having some local talent in there to show off what they have done and give a presentation like Simon. So I'm looking forward to that. Write me a mail. Thanks.
Right, on the question of where do we go from here, the next meetup is going to be, we're going to show videos of the second meetup. Right, very quick announcement. You guys want to hear more of Jeremy? There's going to be a conference in Melbourne called Web Directions Code. I did say Melbourne in Australia, but they actually offer a ticket where you can stream it. And it's actually very cheap, and we have a discount code for you guys just for Manila.js. The discount code is Manila.js. So that it costs $1599. It brings it down 25%. And it's a streaming conference again, so you could just watch it from the comfort of your own home or your office. And there. Speaking of which, has anyone seen Jeremy? Oh, hello. So, could we do like 3 more questions?
Questions?
Yeah. Because there were a couple of people who raised their hands who hadn't had a chance to ask them. Okay.
And then you're right over?
Yep. Oh, yeah. One more announcement. After this, we're going to Ramen Bar. It's right across. Well, it's sort of right across. You need to walk the walkway, and it's right there in Venice Piazza. It's one of the restaurants in the strip, and they serve, well, of course, ramen, and they also serve pilsen, so it's wonderful. Oh yeah, we did secure some sponsors for the pizza and the pizza oven, so your ramen and beer while your own pockets. All right. So anyway, 3 questions, please. What's your name, sir?
My name is OJ.
OJ TV. All right.
Good evening, Jeremy. I guess this question was made because a lot of other people asked you earlier about the future of JavaScript. And I was wondering if JavaScript has its inherent issues and JavaScript is ECM-based script, so it's standard. Have you considered, or did somebody suggest that you make an LLVM implementation of CoffeeScript?
It's been suggested before, actually quite a few times, that people are interested because they like working with CoffeeScript or whatever, and they want to use it natively. I think the CoffeeScript itself, so the question is would it make sense to have a version that doesn't compile the JavaScript source code, but that compiles directly to native code through LLVM or something else? I don't think it makes sense for CoffeeScript itself. It could make sense for a language that's similar. It doesn't make sense for CoffeeScript because, again, all of CoffeeScript semantics are defined in terms of being very, very, very close to JavaScript semantics. So how numbers work, right? How function call lookups work, how the prototype chain works when you call a method and an object. It looks at the prototype chain in that very particular way. You know, how variadic arguments work with the arguments object in JavaScript, right? Basically, any working CoffeeScript program has all of the semantics of JavaScript from numbers all the way up to everything else in it. So if you had a version that compiled to LLVM, you would either be writing a JavaScript engine effectively, or your code would not be compatible with other CoffeeScript code, at which point it would no longer be the same language. And if you're not limited by what JavaScript can do, you can do better than what CoffeeScript can provide. You can have things like negative array indices and proper integers and all kinds of other lovely stuff that you can't have in JS. So you could do something similar, but it definitely would not be CoffeeScript, I don't think.
Small, medium, or large? Oh, t-shirts. Medium, all right. Well, only comes in per group, so. Mr. Uri.
I don't know, I came late, so I don't know what to do, but ASM.js, you don't know the compatibility of backbone, any reason to think that things won't work out? Because it's a subset of commands.
So ASM.js doesn't really work like that. It doesn't really work like that. So ASM.js is a new cool hack that Firefox has, where if you write a very special subset of JavaScript that is not garbage collected, limited to only math operations, and actually limited to math operations on typed arrays, so it's not even regular JavaScript number math. It can be sort of translated into basically C code and then runs way faster than JavaScript does dynamically. But it's not really, it is a subset, but at the same time it's not really compatible with JavaScript object model. So you have no objects in ASM.js. So the idea of like a backbone that runs in ASM.js doesn't even make sense because a lot of the stuff the backbone is based around touching the DOM, doing AJAX calls, having strings and you know, objects and everything else has no representation in ASM.js unless you were to write some kind of virtual machine in ASM.js itself. I do think ASM.js, potentially, depending on if it gets standardized and adopted by anyone else, which is pretty unlikely, but could happen, could be really useful for the really math-intensive parts of your program if you shelled out to them over an API. If you write just that subroutine in ASM.js, pass the numbers across to it, have it do the crunching for you and give you back the result, that seems like something that might be doable. For example, if you have a layout engine that's really mathematically expensive to do, you're laying out this huge grid of tons of stuff and you're just doing the math part of that, that's the kind of thing that may be very difficultly and only in Firefox today. You could do that way, but most of your view code would not be appropriate for that.
Okay, we only have time for one last question, then we're off to this place. Right. You can answer that for you. Okay, the gentleman at the back.
Your name, please.
Your name, sir?
Nikom.
Nikom, okay, Nikom Galero. Question, please.
What do you think about Ember?
I like Ember. We give each other a hard time, but Yehuda and Tom are actually good friends, and we've had a lot of good fun, long nights drinking and arguing about the arcane details of crazy Ember object model stuff. And yeah, so Ember to be specific. I mean, I haven't written an app in it, so I don't know. You know, in anger, what it's like to use it. But I think there's lots of, first of all, there's lots of room for experimentation and different approaches to doing client-side JavaScript applications. Right? There's room for the everything is a big fancy template that knows everything model. There's room for the objects and views model. There's room for the everything is based on push right? And your server's pushing events to you model. There's room for the has to render the same way on the client side and the server side model. I think there's a whole bunch of really interesting sort of terrain to explore. And yeah, to be specific, let's see about the way that Ember does things. To be specific, so my personal opinion, which is what you're asking for, is it's a little bit risky, right? So basically, if it works, if you've tried it and you've experimented with it and it works for you, that's great. But in the past, this is sort of an evolution of the same technology, the same type of technology that you've had in previous versions of Sprout Core, older versions of Ember, and there's still some sort of researchy things about it. So it's more than even CoffeeScript, for example. It's got kind of a new object model, right? You're working with Ember objects, not with regular JavaScript objects that have a different sort of mechanism for reopening classes and stuff. That's more similar to Ruby and is not really the native JavaScript way. And so it gets farther away from that point of view. There's things like the run loop, right, where you're no longer dealing with an ordered synchronous way of rendering. Now you have sort of asynchronous. So the infamous sort of Sprout Core run loop where you tell something to change and then you couldn't rely on it necessarily having changed or not until you wait for it to come back. And then there's also, of course, the two-way binding part of the beast, right? So there's lots of different two-way binding plugins for doing connecting your UI to your data model in a way where both changes are propagated down to the UI and changes are propagated back, which is sort of the fundamental heart of the matter. And personally, I think that that's often not what you want. I think it's very tempting to say, oh, I should declare everything, that all my data I should declare it in view as well, and then when I change it here, it changes there, when I change it there, it changes here. It's tempting. It's got serious performance implications if you do need to sort of work in IE7 and IE8. The Yehuda argument, if you ask him, will be that a sufficiently smart compiler can fix those performance problems for you, but in practice it's been like 3 years, and sure, in theory, maybe it could figure it out for you, but in practice, if you actually have tons of observers listening to every single little property in all of your data, and making sure that whenever any of those changes, all of those things need to be updated, it's more expensive than having the control that something like that one gives you, where you can render your views at whatever level of granularity is appropriate for your particular application. Right? I can re-render all of my chunk with all these little pieces of data in one render and stick it into the DOM in one operation very easily. But if you're really granular data binding, you're going to do that like 1,000 times. And then also to the reverse. So coming from the view back to the model, I think that's often not what you want, right? So naive data binding, every keystroke, the magical feature, right? Every keystroke I type into the text area is coming back into my array, as I type it, which is great, except that's often not what you want in a real app, right? In a real app, you might want every keystroke to come back. You might want it to validate before coming back. You might want to press enter or hit enter on the input before you have that data reflected in your model. You might want the user to fill out the entire form and click on the button over here before that data comes into your model. And at that point, it's as easy as just serializing, jQuery.serialize on form, you get back your JSON object and you set that in your model. So I think that doing all the work of tying every little piece of UI back to every little piece of data is usually expensive and not actually what you want for your app in the end, which is why we don't do it by default. But I think it's good ground for experimentation. All right.
All right. That was 3 questions. You can get your T-shirt over here. Okay. Again, this place fairly walking distance from here, and who's coming? Right, a lot of you are. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much it. That was Manila.js Fridays 002. Before we go, present Jeremy a token of our appreciation.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Mystery box.
Yes, it's a mystery box. It's something. Thank you, sir. You could put memories in it.
That's beautiful. Sure it is.
Do you want a small, medium, or large? Okay, this one's large. Okay, that's it. And we're going to wrap up and clean up. A couple of us are going to stay here and clean up The rest of you guys, feel free to walk on over. All right.